Welcome back, everyone, to Engadget's virtual CES 2021 stage. Thank you again for joining us. We just watched Intel's Mobileye keynote at CES 2021. This is the chipmaker's autonomous vehicle company. So it's not exactly what everyone might have been expecting to see out of Intel. Usually, you'll hear about the latest 11th generation chips, and I know from looking at the chat that that's what everybody was expecting to see. But that's not it yet. That will be happening later today. But we did get a bunch of autonomous vehicle stuff from Mobileye, and here to break down the news with me is senior editor Devendra Hardawar. Hey, Dev, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing okay. I was also really more excited for chips, but hey, Mobileye's cool. I'll take that. Sure.
This is the sort of in the weeds stuff that we tend to not really get until we dig really deep into it, right? I mean, we just had a Mercedes-Benz keynote right before this, and really when we hear from companies like Intel and even Qualcomm, when they talk about this sort of C2VX or vehicle chip stuff, this is the sort of the stuff that they get into that sometimes, and I'll be honest here, makes my eyes glaze over.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Well, I think a lot of people forget that CS has basically become kind of a car show, and it's been that
Mhm.
way for pretty much the past decade. But certainly, as the possibility of autonomous driving has become more and more real, right? I remember when I first started covering NVIDIA's move into autonomous
Mhm.
driving chipsets, they basically just got every year slimmed down the hardware, made it easier and easier to like plug this stuff into a car. We're still
Yes.
not there in the future of
Yeah.
self-driving cars, but it does feel like we're getting closer, right? Based on everything we've seen so far.
Absolutely. I mean, Mobileye, I think one of the most interesting things of all the things that were said during this keynote that they said was that by 2025, the company thinks the components that it will have made, as well as through discussions with regulatory bodies, that these autonomous vehicles and robotaxis was one of the words they throw out a lot,
Mhm.
will be ready by 2025 for the general public to use, and that's not that far away.
Yeah, yeah.
It sounds feasible to me because we've already seen a lot of, some self-driving technology on the roads in very minimal ways. But this is beyond that, I think, Devendra. Remember, if we were in Vegas now, how high would the chance be that you would hop in a self-driving cab?
Sure, pretty high. Well, at least maybe not even a cab, but a
Yeah.
self-driving demo car or something because they're just floating around everywhere.
Hmm.
We'll say I don't know if you've noticed, Sherlyn, but I think there's a lot of hype for the self-driving industry.
Yeah.
Several years ago, I think when we first started covering Mobileye, and then things kind of cooled, and I think a lot of people realize that there are a lot of issues involved. Like you need a lot more tech, you need much stronger
Oof.
algorithms, and you need things that work well regulation wise to have a safe self-driving car. So I think that's actually delayed things probably by like 5 years. So initially people were saying like 2020, 2021, we may actually see
Hmm.
cars with decent self-driving capabilities. That's not going to happen yet. But Mobileye is focusing on a couple things, right? Cheap cameras,
Hmm.
good redundant sensors to make sure, something's also, if that camera gets damaged, like they can also see what's happening.
Yeah.
And the focus on robotaxis is cool because it's like, those are the things most people will want, right? We've kind of, I don't know, when I used to live in New York, I don't live there
Hmm.
anymore, but I didn't own a car. I would take a
Yeah.
taxi if I needed to because it was the easiest
Yeah.
way if I couldn't get to a subway, right? And I think for those
Right.
sort of environments, a robotaxi makes a lot of sense, especially when there's not like a random cab driver for you to have to like make to chat with or something, right? It seems so convenient
Hmm.
in a city environment where we're used to just hopping into
Hmm.
Ubers.
I mean, I think if people want to buy a car, they want to buy a car that they drive. I don't think that, I mean, to your point, right? Robo taxis are for people who don't want to buy cars.
Yeah.
And what you said about that 5 year delay, I think one of the things that Mobileye pointed out was the RSS framework that they sort of came up with. This is their own thing where it's not just about, computer vision detecting things like when the light turns red or whether there's a solid line in front of you to know when to stop. There's also a lot of different human judgment things involved, like,
Mhm.
is this person going to cut into my lane or not? Can I tell by the way the wheel is turning and stuff like that?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of information to be processing at once. So that alone requires a lot of sensors, right? And then there's all the communicating with the cloud and everything. This is all part of this grand plan that
Mhm.
still honestly feels like a long way to go because cities just aren't smart enough yet, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, every year it just seems like little by little, right? Like right now, there was actually, I don't know if all of you watched this press conference with us, but there wasn't actually much news. I mean, they said that, yeah, they're going to bring more vehicles to Detroit and Tokyo
Yeah.
and Shanghai and Paris, and maybe New York City. But like, it does feel like this is the stuff they should have been doing for a while. Certainly, the
Hmm.
pandemic slowed down a lot of this progress because they couldn't, be out there working in the field with people. Um, yeah, everything just seems a
There.
little slowed down. I'm really wondering
Yeah.
how, just because I've looked at NVIDIA's technology a lot more, I'm wondering how NVIDIA is thinking of this differently.
Hmm.
Because people are thinking like, hey, Tesla's autopilot, right? That's self-driving, except it's not. It's a really
Yeah.
misleading feature name because it's nowhere near self-driving. It's just very, very smart cruise control, and you should never think of
Hmm.
that as self-driving. True self-driving, I think will be a thing a lot of people will want because I wanna just, like, sit back, on the freeway and read a book or something
Hmm.
while instead of, like, paying attention and driving everywhere. I also think our computer sensors can eventually be more reliable and smarter than human drivers, and we've seen that shift kinda happen over the past decade, right, where just sensors started going into cars. So now most cars have some sort of safety sensor setup, rear if you're backing up, out of a parking space, you'll probably have some sensors telling you if something's going to cross your path. There are probably blindside monitoring sensors on your car.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
things aren't moving as quickly as we'd like. I'd love to see it move faster, and I'm sure the cost of true self-driving cars will be astronomical, like once they are actually
For
released.
sure.
But I like the
Yeah.
idea of robotaxis. I'm in a little like startup town right now outside of
Hmm.
Atlanta called Peachtree Corners. It's a city, it's not a town. But there is like they have a self-driving bus that just runs in a loop around one part of this neighborhood,
Right.
and it's not very smart because it actually relies on painted lines on the street, and
Hmm.
it's also
Hmm.
blocked off from the rest of traffic, so it doesn't have to navigate a lot of stuff. But it exists, it's there, and
Hmm.
people can hop on and use it. So we're getting there. And
Yeah.
I guess like this Mobileye stuff, not a really engaging press conference, but
No.
it's kind of laying the groundwork for where we're going to be going. And it seems like they're actually making progress, so that's nice.
I mean, one of the thing you say about the sensors, right? One of the things that Mobileye did maybe make a big deal of announcing during the keynote, but one of their news highlights, at least from their press release, is that they are planning a software-defined radar to customize to autonomous vehicles, as well as a lidar sort of sensor that they're planning to roll out in 2025. So, there are some little things that Mobileye announced maybe
Mhm.
pretty subtly during its keynote or at CES 2021. And I think, this is all again very in the weeds and it's hard to sort of fully imagine. But, when I did one MWC, I went to the Intel booth and they had their own like
Mhm.
smart car decked out over there, right? And there's so many components that go into this idea of a smart car, not just the thing we're talking about with autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars, and smart cities, but also just built-in dashboards that we might have
Mhm.
seen with Mercedes earlier, as well as like 5G entertainment on the go. There's a lot coming to cars. If that's a thing that you're into, it feels like I don't know. I mean, you just moved out of New York
Yeah,
City,
I
Deb, and
had
you
to
bought
buy a
your first
car.
car. Yeah. I mean, are you excited
Yeah.
for all the stuff coming?
I'm excited only because, hey, I think we do need to move to a world where not everybody owns a car, like we're going to get to
Mhm.
that point. But right now, we are seeing more and more safety sensors. We're seeing more tech, more people, companies are now relying fully on hybrids in ways that they never really did. I believe Toyota's entire minivan line right now, right? All the Siennas are all
Mhm.
hybrids. So we're kind of seeing things step forward in that way. It's not super exciting, I think, to casual
Mhm.
shoppers, but I think that's where technology gets best, right? You don't want to just hit the people who love Elon Musk and want a
Mhm.
Tesla, right? And will pay whatever it costs to get there. You want the people who want to spend under $20,000 to get a used
Yeah.
car or a slightly new car that's maybe kind of small, but we'll just get them from place to place. But you want them to do it safely with safe sensors and maybe with a bit of autonomous driving. Doesn't have to be autonomous, it could just be sensors that make sure that car will stop in case before it gets a crash or before
Right.
they change lanes or something. So we're getting there. I think car tech is more exciting now than it ever has been. I bought my first car in over 10 years. I was living in New York for 10 years, moved outside of Atlanta,
Mhm.
had to get something. So I got a RAV4 2017 hybrid, which I think is a
Mhm.
kind of combines everything I want with safety tech. It actually has a radar, has radar based cruise control, which I've never had a chance to
Ah.
use because nobody's doing road trips now. But that sort of
No.
tech is kind of getting down there, and decent cruise control with radar that can actually, keep your car automatically a distance away from whatever's ahead of it. That's kind of getting us there. So I'm glad to see that some of this stuff is happening. I hope Mobileye can actually deploy a lot of this technology because we've just heard so much from them for so long. I feel
Mhm.
like I've just been
Mhm.
hearing news from Mobileye, like, oh yeah, we've
Yeah.
tracked this many miles of road. Our cameras are getting better, but I haven't actually seen it in action. So they did list some stats, right? Like in terms
Right.
of the amount mapped, their
Mhm.
crowdsourced mapping technology is now hitting 8 million kilometers tracked daily. They've done
Mhm.
nearly 1 billion kilometers so far. And I do think that's going to also be key to it because the map data and the road data and all that is going to make a key difference for how these autonomous cars will eventually work. So
Mhm.
they need something like Waze, and they need it
Yes.
to
Yeah.
be even more real time, not just like recorded map data, but they also need to have all these cars working in tandem, maybe all connected to 5G, that can automatically communicate with each other and spread
Mhm.
this information to all the other self-driving cars too. So I'm interested to see like the broader ideas of what's going to happen in the self-driving universe.
Yep.
Maybe we should have a panel. I want to bring on somebody from NVIDIA
Maybe.
and somebody from
Yeah.
Mobileye to talk about all this stuff. Maybe next year at CES. Um,
Yeah.
but it's happening. Something's happening. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. I'm pretty excited about this.
So I want to address the live chat for a minute because it
Yeah.
seems like some people might have just joined us and are a little confused as to what's going on. Now, what's happened is Intel's a company that Intel owns, Mobileye, just had a keynote about its technology, which is mostly focused on autonomous vehicles. But of course, we understand when you hear Intel, you think chips, chips, and more chips, and we want PC news. And that is all coming. If you just stay tuned to Engadget.com later this afternoon, we will have all the details on the news for you. But until then, we're going to kind of take a look at what Mobileye just talked about, which is, very much in the world of technology, maybe not so much consumer just yet, but this is
There's a lot of
self-driving
stuff.
cars and autonomous vehicles. They're part of the technology you see out of like CES 2021. This is some of the stuff that goes behind the scenes, powers the devices and the cars and the vehicles we will see. So if you're feeling like you want more chip news, just hang in there. It's all
Just hang in
coming.
there. Well,
Speaking.
so I just want to let everybody know that consumer side, the chip side, Intel press conference that's happening at 4 p.m. Eastern. I think
Mhm.
we got our schedules crossed a little there, but that's going to be the chip side news. We're going to have some stuff right after that too. So check out Engadget.com for all of that. But there's a lot going on. Intel is really busy this year, so it's going to be really exciting to see. What are your thoughts about where autonomous cars are headed, Trillian? Like, have you ridden one yet?
Oh my gosh, I always like to surprise you with a little bit of
Uh-huh.
Sherlin trivia that will always
Yeah,
make you shake your head, which is I don't drive.
I
I don't have
noticed.
a driver's license because I moved basically from one city with very good public transport to another city with very good public transport. I've never needed to drive. So I think autonomous vehicles are good because for me, this kind of gives me some independence, returns me, some ability to just go around to places on my own without having to depend on a driver, whether that's an Uber driver or a friend or whoever it
Sure,
is, right? And
sure.
so I am excited, but I am also obviously very cautious, right? Like this is your life you're putting into the hands or non-hands of an AI. So
Mhm.
we'll see. I
We'll
like
see.
Mobileye. Yeah, like Mobileye rightly pointed out, there's a lot of regulations that have to be worked out. There's a lot of communication. There's a lot of tech. There's the speed and the response time has to be so low for it to be safe because things can happen in the blink of a second. On the
Yeah,
other hand,
and
it
that's
might lead to safer driving overall. I'm not sure.
yeah. I think that is the danger, by the way, because like you remember when there was that one Tesla crash, and there
Mhm.
there are occasional
Oh
crashes of Tesla
yes.
and the autonomous driving mode and everything, but that stuff will get a lot of coverage. Meanwhile, thousands and actually hundreds of thousands of people get injured and die every year from normal car accidents, and that's just human error, right? And that is
Mm-hmm.
somebody gets distracted or somebody doesn't see a signal properly, and turns out I don't think we're very good at controlling really fast moving vehicles, and
Yeah,
because of
yeah,
everything happening all at once. Humans get tired, humans get distracted. So I do think
yeah.
fundamentally we're going to get to a place where the machines are safer. Like they're inherently safer. They'll never get tired. Maybe they will have errors. I don't think anything's
Yeah.
perfect, but I think the errors will probably be far less in human drivers at this point. There's nothing telling us autonomous is more dangerous than human drivers. And I've also been in enough taxis in New York where I do wonder how a lot of people survive on the road because New York taxi drivers, I'm not even talking about Uber drivers, I'm talking yellow cab drivers,
Yeah,
can
I
be
know.
kind of insane. It's just wild what there's this we've gotten used to the fact that we can all just get into these vehicles and put your life in somebody else's hands, and somehow that is more trustworthy for people than a computer, which yeah, there are issues and computers will always crash too. Like there are always all sorts
Oh
of
yeah.
issues. But
Oh yeah.
personally, I've yeah, I feel like I have more faith in sensors that can see people from far away, that can see through fog and rain for heat sensing, that
Yeah.
can detect things, where my eye line can't. So
Mhm.
yeah, we're getting somewhere. And Mobileye, I don't know what is going to be the thing they actually ship. I want a robo taxi, or I want a city that's covered in robo taxis. And I guess we're going to get there eventually. I wish it wasn't 5 years away. I wish it was like next year
I
or
know.
something.
I
Mhm.
know. And then there's the flying taxis, but we'll get into that next time. I want to
Oh,
say though, for the people in the chat, let's divert our focus, divert our attention a little bit, and just talk CPUs for a bit without giving. I mean, we don't know the news yet, right? But we can speculate. We
sure.
can tell you what Intel has been doing. What does Intel need to do to step up its game because it's facing stiff competition, right? Devendra, you know the space like the back of your hand. Tell me what Intel
Well,
would need
yeah,
to do to wow
I
you.
cover I cover a lot of stuff. So I think what we're
Uh huh.
seeing right now with Intel going to CS is just they're facing so much pressure from AMD, so much pressure, and also go
Yeah.
look at our reviews of all the M1, MacBook products and Apple products, right? Because those chips, that's a ARM based chip. And up until now, we've only thought of ARM as like a mobile focused thing. And the fact that that thing is so powerful on the
Mm-hmm.
MacBook Air and MacBook Pro, and from what I've read on the Mac Mini, that it makes AMD's hardware look bad. It makes Intel's hardware look bad. So everyone's trying to catch up to that now. But also,
Mm-hmm.
Intel kind of had its butt handed to it last year by AMD. AMD was just producing these they brought 8-core chips to laptops
Mm-hmm.
last year. They were powering devices like the Zephyrus G14, which we love. I love that laptop. Kind of the perfect gaming laptop because it's very portable, but also can pack a ton of power in there. I'm thinking about
Mm-hmm.
upgrading my home desktop eventually soon, and I'm probably going to go AMD just because you're getting more bang for your buck there. So Intel
Okay.
really has to prove to everybody that hey, they can still compete, right? They're not being left behind
Yeah.
here, and I don't quite know if they have enough like stocked up
Yeah.
for that, but it'll be interesting to see. I think competition. This is why competition is good, right? Because when it
Yes.
was only Intel in the market, right, and AMD wasn't really producing those really powerful desktop chips, it was kind of boring. Intel really didn't do
Mm-hmm.
much and didn't really innovate much, and all of a sudden AMD is out here new with its Zen 2 cores and doing so much, bringing so much power and multi-threaded power into desktop and
Mm-hmm.
laptop chips that Intel just kind of has to speed up, right? AMD's been making
Yeah.
7 nanometer chips since last year. Intel just really made 10 nanometer, possible
Yeah.
for them, but 7 is going to be years away, I believe they announced. So Intel's way behind. It's going to be interesting to see, like, can they catch up? Is this going to be the year they do it, or how are they going to
Yeah.
really differentiate themselves from what AMD is doing?
I mean, I think one area that we know Intel typically lags the competition, like AMD, which, by the way, is so funny to think of AMD as not the cheaper bargain version of
Right,
a
right,
laptop
right.
anymore. Right nowadays, they're on par or even better. But back to Intel for a second, like they tend to lag on graphics power. What do you think? Do you think this is the year for them to kind of really match the competition on graphics power, or is that true still that Intel still lags on graphics, or no?
It depends, right? So we've written quite a bit about this. We've written up Tiger Lake, which is their new mobile platform, and that has their XE graphics. So as of
Hmm.
last year, Intel was really stepping up its graphics game with Iris Plus, Xe is their, basically their dedicated graphics hardware. And they announced, I believe this year, they're going to release some sort of external graphics card, right? A dedicated
Hmm.
GPU similar to what AMD and NVIDIA produce right now. So they're getting up there. They have Raja Koduri over from AMD. So I think they're finally paying attention to all this stuff, right?
Yeah, and if we see what we expect to see from Intel at CES 2021, I don't expect them to take on the likes of, let's say, Nvidia, because Nvidia is the powerhouse when it comes to
Sure.
graphics. But hopefully something better that helps them level off, at the very least, catch up and maybe close that gap a
No
little
more
bit more.
UHD graphics. No more Intel UHD
No more.
graphics. I never want to see that again in a laptop. Please keep us away from it. Yeah.
I do want to shout out again to our live chat viewers. Thank you guys for being patient with this sort of confusing Intel keynote situation, but stay tuned. The news that you want is coming. We've got obviously a full slate of programming coming up as well. So plenty of news for chip fans to dig into.
Don't worry. Yeah.
Devendra, what are you? I mean, okay, so I just want to like have one final sort of intel thought for us
Sure.
to like leave on, and I want it to be sort of focused on the chips, right? What do we already know about Intel's lineup that's out there, and based on that, what can we expect to see today?
We know, and there have been a lot of rumors that we are waiting for their new H series chips for 11th gen.
Hmm.
So far, we've only seen their Tiger Lake, kind of their mid range and their low powered chips, kind of the U series
Hmm.
chips. So we want to see where this is going for more powerful things. So for like gaming laptops and everything. So I'm excited to see how far they go. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of news today. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Lots of so those things for like gaming and creator class laptops. I got you. And then
Mhm.
not to be surprised too if after today we hear a lot more laptop news, because that's always a trend, right? A chip maker
Sure.
announces their latest, and then we got a slew of actual products that those chips will appear in that are more or less ready for you guys to buy. Or, if you rather build your own PC, I'm sure you can get your hands on those things too. Any final thoughts on Intel and Mobileye, Dev, before we say goodbye to just the Intel portion of this?
No, I think we're good. We talked as much as we could about Mobileye. Thanks for sticking with us, everybody. And if you have more questions about all this stuff, email us for the Engadget podcast, right? Sherlyn and I do that every
Yeah.
week. So podcast@engadget.com. Send us your questions because I want to do more research around this stuff and I want to see what people actually want to, know about.
And don't forget, if you keep it locked to Engadget.com throughout January 11th to the 13th, you'll have more deep dives and deeper looks at the chips that are being announced this year. We have Chris Schott from our Upscaled web series, who has planned several interviews and segments on the topics. And also, make sure you come back on 4:30 p.m. on Wednesday, January 13th, where we'll announce the Best of CES winners. This is the official Best of CES awards. Engadget is judging it for the 8th year running. And if you want to have a say in it, you can obviously hit us up on social media. I'm at Sherlyn Low on Twitter, and Devendra is at Devendra. Send us, things that you think need to be considered or included, but also on January 12th, which is tomorrow, you can go to Engadget.com to vote for your favorite, because we will be opening voting to the public for the People's Choice Award. So make sure you come back then, because if you're tuning in right now, you're clearly interested in CES and what it has to offer. So I'm sure you will want your voice to be heard. All right, I think that's about it. We will be heading off to the next segment right now. And if you want to get by the way, just a full timetable of everything that's coming up later today, you can check it out on Engadget.com. Our full schedule is there. But also, after us right now, we will have RISC-V and the future of open source computing with, again, like I mentioned before, Chris Schott from our web series Upscale. So more of that really interesting open source computing stuff coming your way soon. All right, and thank you once again for joining us at CES 2021, and stay tuned for more.